Okay, we're recording. Erica, I'll make you host.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
It's been a little while since we've been able to meet. So, as a
Yep.
subcommittee, I mean, so it's really good. I'm glad we're doing this.
I was amazed that we had a meeting in the full committee in 1 week. But
Yeah, that was unexpected, but I think it's probably good in the long run that we get some momentum
Yep.
on some of this stuff.
Yep, I agree.
So, sorry, I'm just trying to pull up my agenda.
I'm just coming down with a cold, or maybe I already came down with one, so I'm glad. I often like to meet in person, but I'm really glad this time we're meeting by Zoom because I wouldn't come and expose you. Like,
I hope you feel better soon.
thank you. I'm not on death's door, but I'm definitely not 100%.
Okay, so since we don't have any members of the public attending, we don't have public comment. The agenda items that I had posted up were to address the revised proposal of the town staff survey, to review the timeline and materials for the proposed listening sessions, and to talk about the website and any other publicity questions that we had raised, and then anything else that I hadn't thought of or remembered. So
Thank you for doing it. It was pretty crazy because of Memorial Day on Monday and the 48 hours doesn't include holidays and weekends. To be able to meet even on Wednesday, you had to post on Friday.
correct.
So thank you so much for being on top of it. I don't know what we
Oh.
would have done because they keep giving us things to do and then making it hard for us to meet. So sorry, a little bit of sorry, negativity. I'm not negative, I'm just like a little bit.
What I would, if I could share, like an extension of your comment, Meg, is just how we're positioned. And hopefully we can check in about this a bit. So
I
in our last meeting, I think someone said we didn't include their um questions. They didn't see their sort of contributions reflected in what we shared. So I think we need to be clear about like our process. Is that feedback like a directive? Are we grappling with things? It just seemed like it could stall this process a lot if we approach things in that way. So we get feedback, we deal with feedback here, um, but then we get more directives like this should have been included. So the spirit of that, to me, really left me with like we need to be clear about like expectations, and approach to sort of making decisions.
so I second everything you just said.
Yeah.
And at the meeting you missed, Erica, I just take some responsibility. Jason came and he presented a different uh, questionnaire. And when we didn't reach agreement, he said, well, we'll just bring two. And then the meeting was already time to end. And I'll take responsibility for not having said something like, wait a minute. We were asked to bring one survey. Let's not bring two. But he was bringing on his own. It just created at that last full committee meeting was a lot of time was spent on that. The fact that there were two surveys when we'd been asked to bring one. I'm just agreeing with, I'm not sure that's quite what you were getting at, Raphael, but it was exasperating.
I
Well, I
think,
don't know if you all saw Andy shared a version of the survey too.
Yeah,
Yeah. So just
but at
to,
least they're,
that happened just for the record, because we're recorded, we were shared another version of a survey just before this meeting.
Mhm.
And it raises exact question that you just raised, Raphael, which is where does this process actually live, and what is the nature of like feedback versus approvals, and how does the subcommittee relate to the committee in the creation of this work product, whatever it is we're producing, whether it's
Right.
survey materials, publicity materials, um, other kinds of plans for public outreach. And one of the things I came away with from our last committee meeting was the sense that without rehashing everything, that I was confused about the same thing, which is I know I had to miss a meeting, but I was not clear on the fact that we were proposing new forms of the survey for any particular
Right.
reason of the original survey having failed in some fundamental way, but that there were sort of proposals being offered. And so my approach to what we have to do tonight and going forward is that we're putting forward proposals, is how I'm responding to the question that you're raising, Raphael, which is that this subcommittee is charged with working up proposals for public outreach and putting them before the committee for a vote. If the members of the larger committee or you feel differently, then we should talk about that. But I feel like we have had a series of discussions in this small group about that we're going to produce a certain number of things or certain sort of kind of proposed activities or approaches and bring them back to the larger committee. That process, I feel, has been a little bit derailed in the last month or so, but that we have an opportunity to make a lot of progress very quickly if we can treat these things as proposals, as opposed to loosely floated ideas that are open for a ton of debate and starting
Right.
from scratch.
Right.
That's just my approach, but that doesn't mean that we can't discuss that.
Yeah, I just think clarity it would be good to name this to the whole committee and be
Yeah.
clear on the process. Because I think like things filtering into the space produced by others that are perhaps like I think we could work smarter. I think if you think about the process that exists now, we have a number of surveys that have been produced by different folks,
Yeah,
which I'm not sure we need to approach this work in that way.
I would agree.
Certainly, folks can get feedback, insight, but I think we're in a position where there's much to do. And I think we need to be thoughtful about where the work lives. And I think the proposal idea is a great one. But our meeting last time, in many ways, the whole committee meeting, just a lot of time spent on.
Yeah.
I wish we had forged ahead.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you wish, well, I missed the
I
last.
wish we had moved on from said survey.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time on that.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Totally agree.
I agree. And if I was starting over and this was October and not April, I might take up that question with a lot more a lot more forcefulness and clarity at the beginning, right? But here we are, and I feel the urgency of finalizing some pieces of work so that we can actually have material. Process is hugely important to me, and I'm not dismissing it at all. And I just wish I had clarified some of those questions earlier on.
Yeah.
Well,
I also mean, Erica, for us moving forward, like we're bringing
yeah.
this material forward, we should be clear about what's the expectations, what's our process.
Yeah.
So
And one thing I would put to you as my fellow members of this subcommittee is that I think one thing that we can do consistently is be very clear that the report out or the work product of the subcommittee needs to somehow be at or near the top of every agenda of the larger committee.
Absolutely.
That is just one small piece that can help clear up the relationship of the two groups.
Right. Because at the meeting, the full committee meeting before this one last week, we were down near the bottom, even though we had more to report and more to report that was relevant to the priorities of the whole project. That I totally agree. They need to put our reports and materials very near the top of the meeting.
I
Because
will
there's
propose that.
ongoing discussion about outreach and outreach and outreach. And like, we're the outreach committee, so yeah. Oh, sorry, I got
That's one
super
thing
frustrated.
that's one thing I plan to propose
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I appreciate how calm you both are, because I was really upset about it. That was just like, it really, but anyway, and now I have a cold, so that's probably why.
Me, it's also like just being clear about like there's much to do, little time.
Right,
We're clear about like the approach, it might be helpful.
Yeah.
well said.
Okay. If either of you have additional like notes or thoughts about that, about our approach or about process in that particular way, then that you want to send to me separately, because we have also, again, I'm thinking about like this, we have this piece of time to get ourselves aligned on what are the things we're producing and bringing tomorrow. So if you have
Good.
other thoughts, send them to me.
And thank you for leading the charge tomorrow night, Erica.
I hope I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try. Okay. So the first piece of business I think is the survey. I put forth a revised version of the survey. I took, Raphael, what you sent me, which was the feedback, a kind of documentation of all the feedback we'd received, plus your reworking of some of those things. I tried to incorporate all of those things into a revised version. I used the same platform that I had used before. So there's two things here. One is I want to clear up the question of the technical platform. And I would like to sort of discuss the current revised version and see if we are aligned on where it stands and what still needs work, so that we can feel confident to put it forward for, like, we as the subcommittee feel behind this survey once and for all, and we'd like to take a vote on it or whatever.
Great.
So first thing I want to say about the technical platform, we got a little bit mired in a discussion that was unclear to me in last committee meeting about the difference between the two, whether it was a difference between two survey approaches or two different technological platforms, meaning Google
Right.
versus Airtable, which to me seems largely irrelevant. Each one might have their advantages, but it didn't seem to me like there was that either one posed a technological hurdle for the user, which is the far more important question. And now I want to know if I'm raising this because I want to know if either of you or if the larger committee, when I wasn't there, raised that as an issue. If it's a technological hurdle question, I want to address it. But if it was just a question of like, well, I like this one better, then that's a different kind of issue.
Yeah, I think we were bringing forth the proposal again. Which platform would we prefer? I think there were, in our subcommittee meeting, conversations around like familiarity with Google, perhaps easier for many, but we didn't settle on anything. I
Okay.
think
Right.
we'll bring it to the full committee. In terms of like survey design, I think Julian felt the need for more quantitative data.
I heard that comment. Yeah,
Drafted the survey that he did.
right,
So those were the two things on the table.
right.
And
So
you go ahead.
the revision that I did stuck with the open-ended question approach. And I want to be clear that I stuck with that because from all of the feedback that I listened to, that we had as a small group, that I heard in discussion, and that I saw in the written feedback that Raphael, you collected,
Mhm.
I saw plenty of feedback around doing open-ended questions, but maybe doing them better or different, as opposed to switching to a quantitative questionnaire approach.
Right.
And so that's what I took in and revised and responded to.
Well, well, Julian still feels like it should be mixed.
Yeah,
So
Right.
we didn't really have a discussion as a whole committee about that element in any depth.
No,
I think we got
correct.
derailed by like questions. And that took up a bunch of our time.
Right. It was not a productive discussion. But the
so
thing that nobody addressed the problem that when these quantitative, yes, somewhat, maybe the fact that people will answer them all differently. Nobody addressed that. The fact that when you get into those different quantitative answers, we don't know what it
um,
means.
I do think it would be helpful for Julian to share more about his perspectives regarding the why and reporting, but I don't think he had time to do that with the full committee.
Yeah.
So again, I think he shared his a version of that survey again. And in terms of like moving forward, I think we should perhaps review your rework survey, Erica, but then talk about like approach. Andy has something that he shared. Julian does. Do we bring the three forward to the full committee? I think we should.
Mhm.
But those two are in play.
okay.
But it's a shame
Um,
we don't have time to reconcile them because we could go through the same, Andy said, Julian said, the subcommittee said, but I don't know how to deal with it with such a short amount of time any other way.
of course, this is an issue for the larger committee, like you said, to sort of hold them all up together and see what we all feel. It would be good for me to know where the subcommittee stands
Yeah.
on this very important question. And I can tell you where I stand on it, and then I'd like to hear what you both think. Like I had a reason for sticking with an open-ended
So
approach, open-ended
why don't you
question.
share it? Why don't you go ahead and share that and then see where we are?
You mean share what I'm thinking about that?
What you just said, why don't you could share and we would,
Okay,
so you
so
know going into the meeting where we're as a subcommittee stand.
correct. So my feeling is that for this particular survey, which we were charged after Bernie sort of had proposed it way back, right? Then we debated whether it should be an interview or a questionnaire. We landed on questionnaire. For this particular audience, I felt like an open-ended question approach was appropriate and allowed for the biggest kind of latitude in what the nature of the responses and the nature of the various high contact with the charter experiences that we're evaluating, which are very different than the general public that don't necessarily have high contact with the charter itself, but have feelings and opinions and thoughts about their experience of living with the charter, which is it's different than working within its frame.
Mhm.
And so the idea, I'm not constitutionally against quantitative questionnaires. They have a place, and I feel like maybe that the place for them is more in the larger public survey, because those kinds of questions, sort of to your point, Meg, have to be really carefully crafted because those scales and everything, people read them a very different way. We were planning on consulting in some depth with the Collins Center about how to craft. Then you get sort of into how you're skewing things statistically. You have to be really careful, I believe, with quantitative approaches in surveys is very different.
Mhm.
Because we came in through the door of, oh, let's interview the town staff and elected officials, that's where we started.
Mhm.
An open-ended questionnaire most closely resembles the format of an interview, where you frame some questions and give people
And they can
a
go,
lot of floor space to answer how they're going to answer, which to me reads and feels very different than scaled questions and quantitative responses. So
It's like when you
that
go to
was-
the doctor's office and has a scale from 1 to 10 of how much pain you're feeling. Well, that has to do with how
for
stoic you
some
are.
things,
Yeah.
for some things, those are useful, right? And for some things, they minimize. And so I felt like for this particular audience to try to capture all of the nuances of people who live and work within the frame of the charter, that's what I thought an open-ended questionnaire was more appropriate. So that's my feeling, and I would like to hear where you both kind of land with that question so that we can really evaluate this well.
So I would say, like, I wanted to surface this conversation happened during our last subcommittee with Julian. And Julian has his perspectives about those types of questions. What I wanted to happen was this conversation be elevated to the whole committee to make some decisions about it. So I'm in agreement. I think open response questions are fine for this.
For this survey, you're
For
saying?
this survey, for this
Got
survey.
it. Okay.
I agree with you completely, Erica, and we can follow these up with individual conversations if it's appropriate. I think that we just want to get going, and the more kind of many different answers there are, the harder it is to calculate what you heard. So I'm completely support everything you said, but I'm happy to support Raphael's suggestion too, that we have the whole committee discuss it. I just don't know how. We
No,
need
I
to make
guess-
sure that conversation is focused so that they know it's that it doesn't just go off the rails.
I guess what I would say, Meg, is as a committee, like these proposals that we're putting forward, like we come to some agreement here, we have our rationale, and we put it on the table for the whole committee.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I feel the same. I don't want to shut down any discussion. I would like, I think it's important for us to hear each other out. So going in there, we have some understanding of if we were behind this proposal of an open-ended questionnaire.
Right.
So given that, should we move on to just any feedback or thoughts on the status of the questionnaire as it currently is the one that I sent?
Well, should we look at what Andy sent very few minutes ago? I haven't read it yet because it wouldn't open at first. So then I wrote to him and said, you didn't publish it. So shortly before we started meeting, he published it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not against looking at what Andy has proposed. But I feel like if again, going back to the beginning, if I want us to go into the committee with something like a proposal that we are roughly agreed
Okay.
on,
Right.
I'd like to review the one that we spent the most work on
Good.
and feel confident about that. And then, and also
Right.
Andy has proposed one. And also Julian has proposed one, but I feel like we were given a charge to do something, want to see it through, is how I
Good.
feel right
I
now.
agree. And this is a 1-hour meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get going with that. I'll agree with anything. I'd love to get through this and get through the listening sessions
That's right.
so that we can have those two things to bring.
Let me pull this up so we can all be looking at the same thing. Hang on.
Because we have 35 minutes. We're good though. We can do things in an hour. Takes them to. Hope nobody listens to this recording. Nobody will.
Okay, so here I'm gonna just I'm putting this up just so we're all looking at the same thing, but I'm just taking feedback on any part of this or any part when you looked at it, like if there was anything that seemed I think Raphael, I took how you revised the preamble. I took that kind of wholesale, so that's been revised. Most of your suggestions for the revision to the kind of opening data kind of questions I took. with a couple of exceptions.
Mhm.
I took out all the stuff about how long have you lived in Amherst, because that seemed
That's
to,
good. Irrelevant.
it seemed irrelevant to some people, or not useful, or even off-putting to some people, so
Do,
I
do you
took it
think,
out.
do you think we
I-
should add a sentence for why if everything's aggregated and anonymized, why we're asking for their name? Which you could just say, we're asking for names so we can have follow-up questions, or just leave it the way it is.
I can certainly add that. Why we're asking for a name. I'm just making a note for myself.
Yeah, okay,
I added this piece, which is in the event that this felt like a technological hurdle to some people. I added a place where if somebody wanted to read all these questions but answer them somewhere else, and just
great,
send us a PDF of all their answers for whatever
great,
reason that's available. This is just about the role. And the reason why this is
great.
important to have a look at is because, as I think I explained when I sent it, I've made certain questions are just general for everybody, and then a certain subset of questions are specific to the role. And so depending on what one chooses here, a different subset of questions will come up because of the debate and conversation
Oh,
we had
oh,
last week, and the feedback that we got from Andy, Bernie, and otherwise. That there's different questions that are appropriate to town council versus people who
mhm.
serve on a committee, etc.
Great.
So let's talk about the general questions first. These are very pared down. I think I took this largely from what you had put together, Raphael, but I wanted to ask the framing of are there aspects, does that feel too much like, does that feel like yes, no, or does it feel obvious enough that we're asking for
Specifics.
a more deliberative answer?
That's a good question. You could add something like, please describe, but it's sort of implied, don't you think?
I think it's implied. I just wanted to just run it by you.
It's a really good
I
question.
think I think we should do what Meg shared. I think just to be explicit a little
Mhm.
more. Um,
Please describe.
yeah, I think that.
Okay,
And
good.
after O2, the same thing.
Yeah, those two are the same.
Please describe.
I'm gonna skip over this role-based stuff for 1 second. I'll come back. I changed, if you remember, I had earlier had just these headers for these additional topics of interest.
Mhm.
And so what I've done is I've revised them a little bit, and I added descriptive text under each one that really, really, really briefly summarizes what's currently in the charter about that topic.
Mhm.
In other words,
Uh-huh.
giving some grounding in what is the status quo, so that people have some frame to respond to. Not that people won't necessarily know, but I think even if you work in town government, you might not know what it explicitly says. So it's just a very brief summary. But
Yeah.
if people feel like it's not useful, it's also, everything can be edited. So we don't have to release this survey until we feel comfortable with those little descriptives. If you're,
Mhm.
um,
It's a small thing, but in that terms for elected officials, the second line, 1-year terms should have a hyphen between one and year, like
oh,
you do under
okay.
2-year. Sorry,
But,
the English teacher.
yeah. Um, and I revised what they say, so that I think that they're a little
Yeah,
bit accessible, how they're described.
great.
Right.
And then a sort of broad scope field at the end for anything else we might not have captured. These are meant to be just they lightly touch on almost every article without being heavy-handed about like
Yeah.
asking a
Article
really
3.
specific question, which is there
Mhm.
anything you want to comment on with this topic in mind?
Mhm.
Um,
Excellent.
I
Thanks for
believe,
so
I
much
believe
work.
sorry, Beck.
Thanks for so much work.
Um, I believe the version that Andy sent is a much like condensed list of questions. It doesn't necessarily propose some specific topics, which is also a very, very valid approach. We could just do kind of some positive aspects, some challenges, and some much more general broad-based questions. Also open to that. This is just one approach. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think that's where I vacillate. I like the sort of targeted pull out part of approach, but what he proposes is just noting the article, few words, and then having people sort of address each article as needed. So that's the difference that I'm going back and forth about.
Mhm.
But I could land on either.
okay,
Me too.
okay.
I like this.
And then this role-based questions, which right now looks blank, is the part what I was saying, depending on if you select town council up here. You get an additional set of questions that shows up that are
Oh,
for
wow,
people
cool.
who are currently or formerly involved in the town council.
Wow.
That's great.
And those are again pulled, it's sort of like a hybrid version of feedback that I saw from Raphael, from you, from Andy, and from Bernie. And also from the discussion that we had as a group.
Great. Okay.
And like I said, we might feel that those general questions and then these role-based questions, that's enough. We don't need all this stuff at the bottom. And then if I'll go up here and switch the role to committee.
Wow.
And I think I noted when I sent it to you that I don't have a subset of questions for town staff that are clearly defined and specific to that kind of role as different from those other two.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So totally open to whatever combination of these things we land on. This is my approach.
Okay.
Well, this works for me. I'm
Um,
impressed that you can,
So
the different categories of questions, role-based questions are distinct based on what you click.
what I'd like to do is what I would have liked to do last week, right, is to sort of talk through this process just like I am now for the larger committee, because I wanted to be really clear how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was trying to explain it verbally last week, but I think it's hard to know until you see it, that the advantage here is that we're sending out the same link to the same survey, but it's sort of customized a little bit for different audiences. There's other ways to do that, but that's one thing that I like about this approach. Okay. Other than, go ahead, Raphael, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm on board with this survey. I think if you go down to additional comments,
Yeah,
I think maybe uh in between perhaps is maybe like bracketed some of the things that aren't above that are in the charter. Does that make sense?
say that again.
Whatever is, you have some things that have been pulled out.
Here
But
in these questions.
right above, yeah. So when it comes to anything else, maybe just bracketing some things that are in that anything else category. to perhaps have folks think about, consider. So without naming all of the articles, just adding like some other things that are addressed in the charter, not all, but just a few. Seems,
Just more like a list
yeah,
as opposed to a block for each one.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Instead of separate questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I share this tomorrow, I will make that comment as well, that's an alternative that we
Mhm.
can propose.
Maybe let Julian know before the meeting that we all would like you to be able to go through it this way.
Yeah, I plan to, after we're done, to just email him so that we're clear
Great.
that we want to
Good,
go through these.
great.
Other comments or feedback that I should take away?
I think this works
Sure.
for me.
Yeah, me too. It's terrific. Thank you, Erica.
Okay, good.
So before we jump to the listening sessions in terms of sharing, so in my mind, I'm assuming like this subcommittee has put forth this survey.
Yeah,
Looks like there are other surveys in play. We could share the survey that we're good with this survey. We're putting it
Yeah.
forward. And we just leave the other sort of surveys for people to put forth and share. So
Yeah,
it would be good to be clear about what the process is with the chair and others.
well said. Just diplomatically said.
Yeah.
we're supporting this survey, is what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
Okay. I see we have an attendee in our list,
Great.
participants list. Hello.
Do you want to move to a listening session?
We definitely can.
Oh, it's Andy. We just
Yes.
finished talking about the survey. Oh, well.
Yep.
Hi, Andy.
We have, Meg, you have a proposal that where you compiled all of our ideas, dates, facts about the listening sessions
And questions.
and questions, respective to that. So let's talk about that. Do you want to share, should I share the document so that we can
If
go
you
through it?
could, that would be great. I'm not, for some reason lately, oh, and I have share back again. But
I
I'd
can
have to
do it.
pull it up. If you could, that if you have it right there,
I
I'll
do.
start pulling it up in case there's,
I do.
actually, here it is, but
Here it comes.
okay. Yep. So we had thought of having 3 in-person sessions, and then it was suggested, I can't remember if it was you, Raphael, adding a couple of Zoom ones. So I just kept it as 5, although
Mm-hmm.
we didn't discuss it. Raphael made a comment near the end of a meeting that maybe 4 would be enough. But I didn't know which in-person one to delete, whether the South Amherst, North Amherst, or middle of town. I think one of the big, go ahead, sorry.
If you stay with this, Meg, I think we should perhaps talk about an option for some form of this on Zoom. Um, and thinking about this, maybe to me, 4 in person and then some options on Zoom. I'm
So
just
this
thinking
has 3 in person and 2 on Zoom.
Okay.
So 2 and 4 are virtual. I should have
Okay.
said Zoom. And 3 are in person. This is why we
Okay.
hadn't really talked about it. So we
Okay.
still keep the South Amherst, middle of town, and North Amherst, but we add 2 Zooms.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I'm fine with 5. It's just
oh,
thinking
okay.
of the capacity in terms of who is facilitating
Yeah.
these sessions.
Well, there are 2 levels of facilitators for this plan. There's
Okay.
the 3 of us and other people on the committee lead the whole big thing. And then there are small table facilitators, which is not a big deal. And I'd be happy to try to recruit those. Let's say we have 6 or 7 tables. That would be 6. Sometimes people who are there can facilitate it. It's, go around, listen, don't let anybody dominate, etc. But I'm going to be quiet and let you discuss it. But the 6, you'll see there's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blanks. That was assuming there were 9 people on our committee. There are actually only 8 who would fill in. So everybody would show. One of the questions is how many others on the committee come to these? Do they each come to one? This proposes that they would each come to one. Or do we want, I don't think it's reasonable for all 8 of us to show up for all 5, but maybe it is.
One comment, Meg, just on the subject of facilitation. But I think that it's my personal feeling that for the virtual sessions, that 2 facilitators is probably enough.
Yeah, okay.
That probably will work fine. Who those people are is up for grabs, but I think that two members of the committee probably for a virtual session might be
Mhm.
enough.
Yep.
Having 3 people for an in-person session could be helpful, given what you are saying about wanting to kind of break up and move around.
Yeah.
Meg, you want to go back up just in terms of format? Like you had some things that you shared that maybe
Well,
we
there
should,
were questions.
yeah.
Tell me where to
Um,
go so I can.
How
focus
about
on
there?
what I
So
want.
there are pros, the theme idea, I think, Raphael, you had that idea, is an interesting idea. The question I have is we're putting them in different parts of the town and some virtual, that people, it seems to me, will come when it's convenient.
Mhm.
So if we do have themes, it seems we need to be flexible. And so I'm raising the question, is having a theme for each one helpful or not? And then what kind of recording are we going to do? I personally think handwritten notes is enough because in a large room, it's really hard to hear what people say unless everybody speaks into a mic. And then somebody has to listen to it. That a handwritten, so if there are 3 of us at least in the sessions where they're in person, someone can be taking detailed notes. But that's a question. And then do we have snacks? How much does that cost? Are we going to offer childcare? How much will that cost? This whole thing of the facilitators. Oh, I misspelled Sam's. I got her name totally wrong. Samantha, not Samantha, and Giffen has no S on it. I got that wrong. She's done training facilitators, and as you both know, has offered to be helpful. Is this enough time? The schedule, given how slowly we move and how long it might to get the poster and get the word out, and then the question about materials. Sam said she'd help with the poster and the web announcement, the press release. And do we need materials for the session? Do we want some big posters or do we want, I don't know, what do we want when people walk in? Summaries of the charter, copies of the charter. So there's this whole thing about when people come, what happens? Is there food? Is there childcare? Are there posters? Are there name tags? All those things take somebody to do them. And we've all done those things, I know. I have piles of name tags here and there and clipboards and so on. But is this a realistic schedule, given who we are, that we don't have staff for this? And a lot to have these be effective. Preparatory work is important. And there may be other questions I didn't think of. I think some of these we can bring to the group. I don't think I want to correct Sam's spelling of her name though before I hope this isn't the version I sent. I guess it maybe is. But those are the questions just about logistics and managing them well. Because we don't want to do these if we don't, if it's rinky dink. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Is your idea, Meg, that we bring this to the larger committee and just go down a tick list of decisions? Or is it that you want us to decide?
Well, either way, I've
Subcommittee.
sent this to Athena just to be sure she had it in
Yeah.
time. But we could replace it with something. And I said, well, so
Because some of
given,
these things we've begun to discuss already.
yeah, it says,
Yeah.
given that we have, a little bit less than 15 minutes, what do you think?
So,
And we can also get rid of the reference to Raphael prefers I just was trying to get it out so there'd be something to talk about. But I can do those edits after we finish.
okay. I think the question, some of these questions are just kind of logistical, and maybe we come up with our own best practice kind of proposal. And some of them are kind of like the first question about having themes for events, I think is a good one to bring to really
Yes,
chew on a little bit with the larger group, because it's really content based and matters quite a bit, could really frame the nature of the whole
Mhm.
project. I
maybe we
think
delete,
some of these things we've already discussed with Samantha.
so let's
like-
delete them.
Well, for instance, the timeline for publicity. She's told us that 2 weeks is plenty of lead time to promote an event. So given, as an example, given the May 22nd, I think is the first one that you had on your list.
Mhm.
That puts you at, May 7th or so as the last possible time to give her a green light to
Mhm.
publicize an event.
But
She had-
the other thing is related, do we want to do a poster with all of the events listed at once?
Yes, and that's one thing that I had put on our agenda for tonight, because I had a flyer to share to see if the group wanted to
Oh, good.
use it as a starting point for something like that, or to just defer it outright to Samantha. Um, um, sorry, I lost my place in the document. Hang on. So the question of what materials need to be produced for the listening sessions is, I think, another one that's important for the committee to talk about. Like, what do we want to provide as kind of, if we're, I think we had raised this in an earlier meeting, like if we want to keep the discussion focused on the charter itself, as opposed to wandering off into people's pet peeves about, this or that thing in the town of Amherst, having some either printed version or something on a screen to share, or something, I don't know if it's a postcard size summary or something to keep the conversation grounded on the charter itself, could be helpful. But I think it's a question for us maybe to decide as a group.
Mhm. Right.
But that takes a little bit
As a
longer,
Yeah.
than 2 weeks. So,
I shared an example of a Zoom listening session from another town, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
have slides where with both of you today, I think.
Yeah.
yeah,
And they have some educational presentations based on the charter. Um, I think in terms of focus, feedback, I think that's where I was leaning towards theme or focus area. So we could just stay targeted in getting feedback about specific parts of the charter. A question that I have is, can we put some mechanisms in place that allow us to have feedback that can be reviewed by the committee as a whole easily? Like the note-taking piece is just tricky. And I know that's a part of a lot of these sessions, but my thinking is, how does this go back to the full committee for review?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's the piece that it would be good to sort of think about a little more.
Yeah,
Like, where are we recording this? And how can that be shared with the whole committee and others?
Yep,
Our work as the
I
Charter Commission.
I agree, because why go to all this trouble if we don't have any way of documenting what we heard?
Mm. I
It's not
think, I don't know
performative.
if
This
you
isn't
saw,
performative. This is research.
but we got an email from someone, I can't recall the person's name, where they had a picture of like a poster, somebody's notes. I think that's just tricky. So that's where I think thinking about some way to capture feedback real time that could be used by the committee is important.
What
And
is
I
it?
don't know
Raphael,
where
are you talking about audio recording?
we could audio record, but there are like some apps that we could use. I think I shared like Mentimeter is one of them
Yeah,
where
and I wanted
we
to
have
ask
some,
you to say more about that.
yeah, it's just a real time like feedback. It's an app that you I'll send you all a video about it. Um,
Okay,
you just could capture real time feedback from folks. I use it in class.
Okay,
So
wow,
you could ask questions, folks have to respond, and it's captured. Yeah.
cool.
great.
But that's the
And
piece we could be really
It's
like
co-
thinking
it's
about. Like,
it's
how would
captured in audio version. The sound is captured.
no, people need to have a device. That's the only
Oh, well, that's what you
they could
said.
use their
That's
phone, but that's the piece that would be tricky if folks don't.
because people, if somebody comes with their kids, say, we didn't get to childcare, but that's when you mentioned it before, I think if people have to type in their answers, it compromises what we what we hear
So,
in
so
terms.
the way I feel though is like it's even if everybody doesn't, even if everybody isn't able, I think it's good to have multiple ways to collect
Sure.
information from said meeting.
Because
okay,
people also might not have the app and then they have to download it and uh,
okay. I also want to say that's not something we have to decide.
Right
I,
now.
right,
I think, Raphael, stop me if I'm mistaken, that we don't have to, even if we decide to use such a thing, which I think is a really interesting proposition, that we don't have to commit to using it for every single session either. Like we
No.
can also not stall our whole plan because we can't quite figure out how to use it best. But
Mhm.
we could use it, say, in session 3, 4, right?
Yeah.
Because we give ourselves a little on-ramp to get something
Right.
up and running and then revise our process or improve our process for subsequent sessions.
Mhm.
Um, so I feel the same about training us for facilitation. I think that we may want to get to that, but I don't think we should let that slow us down
Right,
for an initial session. I'm just
right.
talking about an initial session now.
And I've been to things like this where I don't know if this is how we want to do it. They'll say, okay, choose someone to facilitate and someone to take notes. Everybody in this community, most people know how to facilitate a small group for half an hour so that someone doesn't. I mean, that's the worst case is if we don't do it ahead of time. But the big thing is taking notes for what people say in the small group. And the idea of this, well, let's get to that if we have time. I'll just finish the sentence. A small group is where the juices flow and people hear each other and talk so that they bring up things that they might not otherwise have brought up.
Right. Um, I
But I'm
think
just wondering how you want to spend our
again,
last
a
5 minutes.
small group, I'm open to that idea. I'm thinking about that even solving the problem of the audio recording and booking the place and figuring out the childcare and doing the publicity for a first session is project enough, and that we can work out additional details if we can't get them in place for the first session. I don't think we should
Right.
slow down the first session anymore. That's how
Good.
I feel. Like if we commit to a date, let's say it's May 22nd on your list, that we book the space, and then this is what I'm proposing, that we book the space and then work the details into what's available at that space, who's available for that night, what we can agree on to have theme or no theme. Getting the
Right.
getting the materials and publicity organized in a time and use it as a sort of, you know, trial for the remainder, with an openness to revising how and when,
Right,
how and
right.
with what we show up at the next one.
And maybe skip childcare and snacks.
I feel like the issue of snacks came up and was rejected at some point. and
Oh,
I can't
okay,
remember
good.
how and when that, and I could be wrong. I don't want to deny anybody snacks, but I have this feeling that it came up before, and I wish I
Okay.
had the thing in front of
So-
me, but I don't.
Do we want to edit this to take out the things that we're not going to worry about, or put it in some
I-
form that's more of the first one will be what it'll be?
Yeah, if you want, I can revise. Unless you want, this is your document. If you want to revise this with the things we just said, a sort of simplified, like with these are questions that remain, with certain things we're gonna lock
Yeah.
in for our initial meeting,
Right.
and other questions may remain, and we kind of reserve the right to revise and add to our process or what we want to bring to the table for the next one.
Well, do you have time, or would you like me to do it?
If if you could, that would be great, because I'm gonna make the
Okay.
revisions to the survey based on what we
Yeah,
talked
I'll do
about.
that, and I may not do it exactly.
Do it how
the-
it makes sense based on this
Yeah,
conversation.
yes, okay, and I
yeah.
took some notes, great.
And we didn't
Uh,
have time to share this, Meg, with the whole committee. So it'll be good to hear from them. And we have
Yeah.
time, as Erica said, to sort of tighten things up in the smaller group as we move forward.
So I did send this to Athena to post, just so it was up there, but I hope I didn't send with Samantha's name misspelled, but anyway. I think I corrected that, but, and I'll take out, I'll fix, I can see what needs to be done. I'll do that tonight, unless I fall asleep.
okay. As far as the timeline itself, that's something that's going to come up. I feel like this is a reasonable sort of layout of 5 workable dates for now. It will become important that we approve all those dates so that we can do publicity, as you said, Meg, of everything at once and not do the piecemeal. So we'll have to kind of debate, vote, decide, whatever on
Yeah,
the
book
set
those,
of
book
them,
those, yeah.
the set of
The
them,
three-
not just one at a
yeah.
time.
Yeah, and the only 3 have to be scheduled in a physical place.
Yeah, but I think that we should publicize all of them
Oh,
together.
yes, but I'm saying in
Yeah.
the terms of you can't you have to call the Survival Center and the Jones Library, and that, at least it's only 3 instead of 5.
Right.
But Sam gave us contact information for the library and the school.
Yeah.
And I'll take out 3 facilitators for the virtual ones and make it only 2. But I was hoping that there'd be a space for so that every member of the committee attends at least one. I think they'll want to attend anyway.
I hope so. I just meant that in terms of how we organize the work of running them.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, do you have enough to go on, Meg, to,
Sure.
okay,
I mean, maybe not perfect, but it'll be better. And
yeah, I
it's
just,
good enough. You know, the concept of good
it-
enough.
it gives a lot to talk about, and I think it's great we have it all in one place.
Public
So I'm
comment.
gonna take this down. I know that we're just over time. If I could just can I borrow 10 minutes additional of your time?
Sure. Yep.
I had proposed a website and I sent that along. We don't have to debate it at length, but I just wanted to get any feedback on the concept. The idea is, I know that some of this stuff already exists on the town website, but I find the town website somewhat difficult to navigate. Things get sort of buried and lost, and it's not the most user-friendly, and it's not the most visually obvious where
Mhm.
things are. And so the idea was to collect everything that we are doing on the public facing way as a committee. I'm not putting all of our minutes and all of that here because
Mhm.
that's official business and that lives somewhere else already. But anything that has to do with publicizing our events and ways for people to learn about the charter, ways for people to give input on the process could be housed on this website.
Great.
So that's the concept, and that's what I wanted your feedback on before we take it to the larger group. Even though I've already sent them the link, I just wanted to have a sense of, because it's a public outreach idea.
I'm on board. Yeah, I think it's could be very useful.
I am as well, and I
Okay.
predict some pushback from the town people who manage websites and like control, but we'll see.
I imagine that too. I don't know how that works and what needs an official stamp and what can just sort of live outside on its own.
So it'll be interesting
To be
in
clear,
itself.
one of the things that I wanted to address with the website is that in the FAQ section is I've noticed in some of the kind of editorials that have come out around town about the work of the Charter Review Committee. I'm sure you've seen some of them, if not all of them. A kind of I don't know, suspicion's too strong of a word, but a sort of
Almost.
a
Not
kind
quite.
of doubt or uncertainty about what the motivations are or what the hesitations are or what the kind of obstacles are to the work that we're doing, or what are we really working on and what's the goal, and who's really controlling this committee and all of that sort of thing. And without delving deep into the whole politics of this work and of the town, I thought it might be an effort towards transparency to put an FAQ on our site that we control, that's not part of the town, that says this is what we're about.
Right.
That was the idea behind that.
I totally agree with you. I just anticipate, we'll see.
Oh, I
think
anticipate
it's-
lots of pushback.
Yeah, not from our committee necessarily, but you know, the town's bought into the way they do things, and control is one of the things they like.
Yeah.
But
And there may be official reasons for that, and there may
Yeah.
be just preferences for that, but
thank you for that work.
final. I put together just a sample flyer. I think, Raphael, you said you wanted to work on one as well, but this is not
Yeah.
to step on anything. It's just to say, this is what I worked on. And I will
Yeah.
happily share it with the committee if we feel good about it, or if we want to revise. Let me put
I
that up.
haven't had time to look at it, but I'm happy to share it.
I didn't
So I
send
don't-
it. I didn't send it yet.
Oh,
This
good.
is
I was
just,
gonna
I'm just
say I
sharing
missed
this,
it.
just sharing this for 2 minutes right now.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, wow, I missed it. Hey, Amherst. Oh, that's cool.
These are not real dates. This is all just
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
a place for a QR code, a place for that website if we do it.
Mhm.
Looks good.
Wow.
So
Just idea being simplicity and boldness of like trying
Yeah.
to stand out from all the visual noise. Again, this only works really if we have an amherst.gov blah 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 site. It's less it doesn't work as well, but
Mhm.
I'm going to share this with the committee as well, but I wanted to share it with you first.
Great.
Raphael,
So-
are you still interested in working? Are you working on one as well?
I'm working on it in Canva. But it's something that I think I could share next time we meet as a subcommittee.
Okay, perfect.
So by the way, the long list of outreach and to places to send all this information to nobody's gotten back to me on any of the, but, you know, it was
Well, a lot
probably
of them,
far.
a lot of those places, Samantha will be reaching out
Yes.
to herself, and then we can
Yeah.
fill in if you want.
Right. Yeah, I was very grateful for her generous offer.
Yeah. Okay. We've got through, I think, what was written on the agenda, but is there anything else we want
Well,
to talk about?
public comment, did Andy want to say?
I think he's gone.
Oh, good. Not good, but, and minutes, I have the minutes I took of the meeting that only Raphael and I attended. I'm just gonna delete those two places where I didn't understand what was said. And the end of the meeting was just strange. But unless Raphael, I bolded the two places. If you want to comment on what I should put,
Yeah,
or
well,
otherwise I'll
yeah.
just delete that. I mean, nobody's gonna ever read them.
I missed that.
Don't do it now, but I'm happy to just delete those two. I can just say the meeting ended.
Okay.
Look how flushed I am with my cold. Oh, I'm gonna go to bed now.
All right.
Uh,
Well,
All
so
right,
we're
well-
again tomorrow, so.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good
Yeah,
job. You
Okay.
know, we're doing an awesome job. Thank you both.
yeah.
We're all
Thank
doing
you
things
both.
and yeah, it's great.
Appreciate all the feedback.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Hope you feel better, Meg. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.